So, welcome back to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored with Caroline Stanbury. And today I'm joined by Rebecca Zung. So, she is known and renowned as one of the America's top lawyers in the 1% and has a career over 24 years. I mean, amazing. I'm fascinated by what you do. And you gave me so many topics. I didn't know where to start, to be honest, because I'm interested in all of them. But you also have 400,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is incredible. Incredible. I'm and 2 million downloads, and have just killed the sort of legal practices in the States for this. So what I wanted to understand, and where I get confused, is what is a narcissist? Because it gets flung around so often by so many different people. I'm on Housewives, and apparently we're all narcissists. So I want to hear from your mouth what an actual narcissist is.
Yeah, so it actually is a legit personality disorder, and it really is a spectrum because in some ways we all sort of have it, right? But a person who actually has NPD, I like to give sort of a layperson's definition. It's a person who has the most shame, the most pain, the most insecurities. They come from a place of fear, and it's almost like they have a black hole inside them that can never be filled. And so they try to get external sources in order to fill that hole, but it can never be filled. And that's why when you're around them, you feel completely depleted and exhausted all the time because it can never be filled. And I say that there's two different forms of narcissistic supply. And one is how they look to the world, the image, and the good stuff. I call it the window dressing. The dark underbelly of narcissistic supply is the control aspect, the manipulation, the smearing, the trying to assert themselves as bigger by pushing other people down and making them smaller.
So how did you end up in this niche exactly? So, I mean, it's quite sort of, I mean, it is a niche, and it's obviously one that's kept you extremely successful. So, what led you here? I mean, is it relationships that sort of what was your background before in the legal sort of profession? It led you to doing narcissistic relationships or understanding narcissists through divorce.
Yeah, I did high net worth divorce litigation for almost 20 years. And then during COVID, I actually started on YouTube talking about negotiation in general. That was really what my niche was negotiation. That's how I built my practice. I was the keynote speaker at the American Bar Association in 2018 on the topic. I wrote a book on the topic. Robert Shapiro wrote the foreword. So really, I started on YouTube just talking about negotiation. But I had started studying narcissism before that because everybody started using that term, and I wanted to beat them in the courtroom. I wanted to understand who I was dealing with. And then I also had narcissists in my life as well who were causing a lot of trauma and chaos, is like I usually say, a lot of pain, a lot of sleepless nights for myself. So it was really
So
when I started applying what I was learning about narcissism to what I already knew about negotiation that I started to see movement in the people. I started to understand the personality type so that I could get resolution for my clients and also for myself.
I kind of see it because I'm thinking of one couple in particular, the divorce that was going on now, where where a narcissist, particularly, even though you're divorcing and he wants to divorce you, but he really wants to hurt you. He wants to see you literally with nothing. And then even when you're divorced and it's over, they still want to control you.
100%. So here's the myth. Most people think narcissists just want to win, or they just
Yeah.
want money, or they actually want the kids, or whatever it is. It's never really about that. It's about the game. It's the sadistic side of it, which is
Mm.
there's really no ending to it. Because if there's
There's
an
no winning.
ending, No, because if there's an ending, then they lose their supply source. A supply source is almost like being a drug addict. They'll take it from wherever they can get it. And manipulating, game playing, moving the goalposts, making you squirm, seeing you sweat, all of that gives them supply. And that's why you can never be done unless you apply my slay method, which, definitely works. But that's the only way. That's the only way.
Okay, so that's what I have a girlfriend that's been in one of these divorces now for probably about well, no, sorry, my God. I have been with my new husband nearly 6 years. 6 years she's been breaking up with this man. So how do you get out of a relationship like that? Because when it isn't about money, it isn't about the children, and they're all just tools to hurt you. That, I found, like, when I negotiated with my ex-husband, obviously you have the negotiation, you both agree, and then you move on to the next part. That never happens with the narcissist because it's not about the next part. So how on earth can you get your life back?
Yeah. So I always say that there's the diamond level supply and the coal level supply. And what you have to do is you have to create leverage such that, and so strategy is the S. L is leverage in my slay methodology. And leverage is something where you are threatening a source of supply that's more important for them to keep than the supply that they get from manipulating you, which is the coal
What if
level
they don't have
supply.
one?
Well, they always do. There's always something that's more important for them. And it's always related to image. So they don't want to be exposed, whether it's to their new girlfriend or to people that they work with, or people that, and maybe it's the judge in the case. If there's a case going on, maybe it's the lawyers, where they want to look like they're the good ones, the perfect ones, the ones that are calm, the ones that are clear. And then they try to make the other person look like they're the crazy one. They're the manipulative one. They're the bad one. And so they smear everybody. So the way to do it is to use your documentation or witnesses or the system, whether it's a legal system or whatever system you're in, to expose them using their own behavior, which is always possible because they've always got inconsistencies in what they say, lies, behavior problems. They say they want the kids, but then they're changing the schedule all the time. They're showing up late or whatever it is. And when you can create summaries of this, documentation of this, and say, listen, I'm going to use this against you, then they start to back down.
But there are things like, okay, so obviously at the beginning, when you meet these kind of high net worth men, everything sort of looks amazing. And I always say you're not rich unless he's putting it in your account, before the end. Is, and women sort of think that they don't need to work again and that they're rich now because they're with this rich man. And always, I mean, especially where I live in the Middle East, it's a disaster. So, how can you spot this kind of a man before going into it? Like, how can you understand that a man, because narcissists are quite good, they do present themselves extremely well. They kind of love bomb you. They do give you this very sort of beautiful romantic beginning. How do you know that you're about to go down this terrible journey?
There are always red flags. And if you think about anybody who's been in your life like this, you're going to honestly say to yourself that there were red flags. And whether it's they're not listening to you, they're not interested in you, they're not interested in your life, they're trying to take over your life, they're trying to control your life, they're trying to cut you off from your friends, your family, they're moving the relationship along too quickly. You're saying, hey, listen, how about we slow down? Oh, why should we slow down? We're soulmates. And they're trying to get you locked down and to that next level as quickly as possible. And in a situation like what you're describing, I've seen many times where men have said to women, quit your job. You don't need that. You can travel with me. I'll take care of you, that sort of thing. And then they do that, and then 2 years later that they are left high and dry, and they've already left their jobs or whatever, or they've remarried this person, and so now whatever alimony they were getting before is gone.
Gone.
Right. And so those are red flags.
I want to slap women for that. Like sometimes I want to shake them. I mean, I wish actually you could give women out there a piece of advice, because it's such a mistake. It's such a mistake to give up what you've got before, well, even after marriage. I'm sorry, unless it's been put into your bank account, it's simply not yours. And it can be taken away at any time. And normally narcissists use that against you. You know, they use it as a control so that you don't have anything in your name, so that you can't leave them.
Right. But then when they are tired and they move on, and there you are left. Now, what do you have? And so many people think, well, it's not fair, and all of that. And here's the thing that I have to say is that the court systems, whether it's the UK or I work with people all around the world now, they're not designed to exact justice for wrongs that people do. They're designed to apply the law. And so whatever the law is, that's what's going to be applied. It's not designed to make you whole or to make people behave properly or all of that. It's really like, okay, do you have assets together? They need to be divided. Do you, how many years have you been married? Then, okay, how much alimony are you entitled to or not? I mean, that's the law. And so there's a disconnect between where people are like, well, wait a minute, I was promised this dream. I was sold this bill of goods over here. So somebody's got to make me whole again. Somebody's got to make me pay. And that's not what the system is designed to do. And so, what I teach people how to do is speak the language of the system. Okay, if there's a statute, if there's a law, if there's something that can be applied, then you've got to take your facts and fashion them so that when you're presenting it, it's within the context of the law. So an example that I give is a custody situation. If there's a best interest of the child law, and that law, one of the factors is which parent is more likely to foster a close and continuing relationship with the other parent. And you've got a whole bevy of texts or emails or witnesses or whatever, where this person's been trying to keep the child from you, then that's not fostering a close and continuing relationship. So now you're speaking the language of the court.
I understand that. But again, with the children, they can make it very hard by squeezing. Money is normally the one that really is squeezed out of the
No doubt. No doubt.
My question to you is, knowing what you and seeing as many couples as I'm sure you have, so a man is super successful. He wants you to travel with him, and that happens all the time, and especially again where I live.
Yeah.
And a lot of women are sort of dangled that carrot. They want to go with them, and if you don't go with them, someone else will. How can you today, or what could you do today to protect yourself, to make sure that if you got over a certain amount of time, that you were kind of like a common law wife, or you did have something to your name, that you were worth, not a salary as such, but like something that the years that you've given them, is that possible? Is that
Sure.
ever going to happen? Can you do that?
Sure. I mean, there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. I mean, for one thing, I would say if it's possible for you not to give up your independence as far as financially, do that. Make sure that you've got something, whether you can coach people online from wherever you are or have some kind of career, whatever. I wouldn't give up everything that you have completely for anyone. That's number one. Number two is, if you do get married to a person, then there are ways that you can build exactly what you're saying into a prenuptial agreement. You can put in there, if I'm married to you for 2 years, I get this. 5 years, I get this. At 10 years, I get this. And making sure that it's locked down. Make sure you have representation. Make sure that it's not under duress. All of the elements are in place to make sure that it's valid and enforceable. And
The
if you're
trouble
not going
is
to
that
marry the person, then have a some kind of agreement between you anyway, if you want. I mean, most if they're not willing to put their money where their mouth is, then maybe there's other people in the world.
well, that's the difficulty. I think we've all been brought up with this shame around money and talking about money. I know that from where I'm
Yeah,
from, and things like that. And you're meant to be in
totally.
love, and it's hard to go to the man and start talking. I mean, I did a prenup just now with my second husband, and because we're 20 years difference, and he had different things. I've got kids. I want things to go there, and actually, him being so much younger made it really much easier to have those
Mm.
conversations, and he didn't have any ego around it. Whereas I think men, when as they get older, they are more they feel like if you bring it up that you're asking for money, or they make you feel shame around it, which is probably a sign of the narcissist too, right?
Right. And
Yeah, go
they
on.
also prey upon people who have their own set of shame, their own set of traumas, their own set of, people who are open to, they're vulnerable, and they sense that. They're not going to go for the person who feels whole, complete, knows who they are, is not going to be controlled by them. I mean, they're just not going to go for that type of a person. They look for those openings, those vulnerabilities where it's that person who's going to be willing to put up with them not having boundaries, not showing up for you, not respecting you. I mean, and it's almost like a frog in that boiling water. It's a slow boil, because you're like, well, wait a minute, you promised me you were going to do this. Yeah, well, I never said I was going to do that. Oh, you definitely did. No, I didn't. And that's the gaslighting that starts right away.
I know a lot of women who were promised, that their homes would be put into their names after their children, all of these things. And when it came down to it, it never happened or hadn't
Right.
happened, much unbeknownst to them, And I think that is as much as there is embarrassment about asking for all these things, I think there's also, you need to weigh up the other side, because you're really, excuse my language, up shit's creek the other
Yeah.
side if you haven't checked these things. And so as a lawyer, like, you must see it it's very hard to go back 10 years and rewrite history, and come out the other side, and get the woman what she needs or wants, or what she's got used to. And you see it every single day. I don't know what to advise women in these situations anymore, other than what you're saying and I'm saying, which is, don't leave your job for anyone.
Yes, 100%, or some kind of income stream, whether it's your alimony or whatever it is. I mean, I've seen women who've put their assets into a house or whatever, and then they're now gone. All of their assets are gone. They don't have any more money left over, because the guy promised that he was going to do things for them, or he was going to contribute, or he was going to do his part, and then that never materialized.
So, what would you suggest in today's world for, like, the top three things somebody can do for themselves in their relationships? Again, when you're looking at, there are different types of relationships, obviously. Like, a lot of, if you have a much older man who's very established and a very young wife, that becomes a little more difficult. But if you're starting off with partners, I think, it's easier to have these conversations. But what would you say are your top advices, and also, you know, just the things that could stop women falling into these traps?
Hmm. I mean, I would say the first thing is something that I say all the time, which is you and you alone define your value. People will treat you to the level that you define. And if you have to do the work on yourself to make sure that you feel whole, that you feel complete. I always use the analogy of the Wizard of Oz with Glinda the Good Witch, when the Wicked Witch came around and she flicked her away and was like, "Go away, you have no power here, please." And the Wicked Witch was afraid of Glinda. Like, she was intimidated by her. And it was only because Glinda was like whole. She knew who she was. She stood in her power. The Wicked Witch was only able to intimidate people who had the vulnerabilities. And that was, the lion who felt cowardly or whatever. I mean, and that's so the first thing is you and you alone define your value, know who you are. And then you're not going to be vulnerable to people like that. When people like that come swooping in and start to look for victims to prey upon, you're not going to be the one. And you will vibrationally attract somebody who is worthy of you, who treats you the way you should be treated. And it's so important to do the work on yourself first. I mean, and then second of all, of course, do this kind of education, listen to these sorts of podcasts, go, watch videos or whatever it is to learn the signs. And then as soon as you see red flags, don't continue. I mean, that's one of the things that I think a lot of women do, especially, but I think men do also, is they look at those red flags and then they themselves start to rationalize and defend. Oh, well, he had a bad week. He's got a lot going on. He had a horrible childhood. I can help him, all of those things. So you see the red flags, but then you kind of, I have a friend who says turns them pink. You yourself do that. Because you want to see the good, or you want the life that they're promising, or you want the whatever. And don't do that. If you see the red flags, just heed them. It's that old saying by Maya Angelou: when people show you who they are, believe them.
Believe
It's
them.
so much easier to get out early than years in. So much easier.
And number 3?
Number 3 is, I often say people will think what you tell them to think. And, it's almost like a vibrational thing. I mean, your heart is actually 5 seconds ahead of your brain. And once you can start to really understand coherence and heart math, you start to see that you will sense what's happening and you will trust your gut, but you will also be able to influence the room. And you're a master at this, you yourself. I mean, the more you can tell people what you are, who you are, the more people will respond. The world is always a mirror for you. And that's why narcissists are successful to a certain extent a lot of times, because, my dad used to say, whatever you say it with authority and people will believe you. But the one thing I can say about narcissists is that they always self-destruct. They always overplay their hand. And if you really take a look at the narcissists that this is true. They leave a path of destruction behind them. Everybody eventually sees who they actually are.
They
And
do, but it takes years. It takes
sometimes,
years. It's not days. So,
definitely.
I'm thinking about this case I'm thinking about, but it's years of pain for people.
Oh, yeah,
And
100%.
and there doesn't seem to be an end to it. Is it the same? Do you see female narcissists,
Oh,
this
so
way around in
many.
relationships?
So
So
many.
how does
I
it present
actually,
yourself in a woman?
so I actually had a female covert passive aggressive narcissist business partner. That was horrible. But women tend to be more covert and passive aggressive. So they present also as very nice, sometimes as the victim, sometimes as the most kind person, the person who first shows up if somebody's in the hospital with the huge baskets or whatever it is to the world. But underneath, there's this underlying rage, this underlying jealousy, this underlying resentment just below the surface. And so, they say things that are very passive aggressive, or they do things that are very passive aggressive. So it might be something like, oh, that dress looks really good on you for your body size, or,
Yeah.
something like that. Or amazing that you got that promotion. I mean, especially considering your background, something like that. And or it's passive aggressive. Absolutely, I will do this thing, and then they never do it. And so you're the one left like, what are you doing? But then meanwhile, they might take credit for it once you went and did it all yourself, and you were supposed to be a team. They'll say, we did this and I did most of it, or, that sort of thing. I mean, it's, it's, it's under the surface jealousy. Oh, what was the name of your book again? I don't remember. I can never remember, that sort of thing.
Just taking away your joy, really. It's sort
Always.
of, it's giving you an underhand compliment. They just sort of give you the little compliment, they take it straight back. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've definitely have that. I mean, we have that every day on the show.
Yeah.
It's just such a difficult world to navigate because, as I said, I think women, especially over a certain age and in the life that we're in right now, where people are, they're lonely, connection has become harder. So
Yeah.
everyone does really want love and they're
Mhm.
looking for things. And I think, the connection between humans, because of the phone, because of, screens, because of COVID, all of these things, even just the state of the world is in right now, people aren't as close or aren't as meeting people the same way anymore. I'm, as most people know, not hugely into these apps. I don't think you get the same connection for dating.
Yeah.
And this is how I think people also become disposable, very disposable. And, you must see it. I mean, have divorces gone up a lot? Is that your main thing now? Like just divorces gone
No, no, I
crazy?
don't practice law anymore. I do this full time. I have, as you said, almost 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I have a high
So it's
conflict
just negotiating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I have a high conflict negotiation certification program. So I train coaches around the world. I have my Slay program, which has been sold to maybe 10,000 people around the world in the last 4 years. So I certify coaches. I'm now also training corporations in conflict resolution. I just became a U.S. federal certified contractor for that. And so I do this full time now, helping people around the world. And getting really, it's all about what you're talking about, having love. But it really starts, I always say the first negotiation that you have to do in the morning is with your own self, with your own self-worth. I mean, making sure that you are worthy, feel worthy of it. I mean, narcissists don't. And that's the thing. I mean, and to your point, there's been a 30% increase in instances of NPD between the 70s and the mid 2000s. And I think a lot of it has to do with social media. But when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with a person who in childhood, their brain became dysfunctional. And what happened was when we're in fight or flight, our bodies emit hormones, chemicals, which are mostly cortisol and adrenaline. And when that happens to children on a regular and continuous basis because of abuse, maybe they witnessed abuse, maybe they were neglected, maybe they were overindulged or whatever it was, but they didn't feel enough love somehow. And so when that happens, it actually causes their limbic system to be bathed in this cortisol on a regular basis, and it causes arrested development of the limbic system. And so as they grow up, when they are triggered, then it literally shuts down the prefrontal cortex of their brain, which is the thinking, reasoning, judgment part of the brain. And so you're just dealing with this person who's in full on rage or unreasonableness, drama, chaos, whatever it is, because their limbic system has completely taken over. And so you cannot negotiate with, communicate with, or deal with a narcissist in the same way that you can with a regular, reasonable person. Like to your point when you were talking about your ex-husband, you guys were able to sit down and, oh, well, we don't want to spend a whole lot of money on attorney's fees. We just want to make sure that we get this done, whatever. That's not what you're dealing with a narcissist. They will actually self-sabotage to take the other person down. And that's what
Okay.
people have to understand.
So I'm fascinated by this. So you are brought in to resolve all different types of conflict between people that are unable to find resolution.
Yeah, sure.
I mean,
Whether it's a corporate level or a government level or, business or whatever it is. I have my programs, my certifications, my programs that you can just buy on demand. That's what I do. Yeah.
but that must be incredibly hard on you too. So how do you deal like every day? So have you found someone that a situation that you could not resolve, or that you find that by actually, because if you're saying that these people you're unable to reason with, right? They don't have the same
Right.
mechanisms as us. But
Sure.
in front of you, do you feel like the third person that's been brought in actually can make somebody feel sense? Because so many people are lost with these kind of fights.
Oh, always. There's always a way. Always a way. But the first thing is to put what I call an invisible shield down around yourself and start to see the person almost as if they're a toddler having a tantrum on the floor, because that's kind of what they are. And I would say you have like Superman with the bullets coming off of your chest, or Wonder Woman with the bullets off your bracelets or whatever, and you just sort of start talking to them as if you're almost like reporting the news. I always say never jade. I always wear jade because I'm half Chinese, but never jade, which is justify, argue, defend, or explain. You're never going to get a narcissist to do what you want them to do, or acknowledge you, or see your side, or be complicit, or all of the things that you want, right? You just have to learn how to speak to them in a way that will move the dial. Like, I agree with you. I agree that we're not on the same page. I agree that we're not, this isn't working for us, or let's continue this conversation when we can all calm down. You have the power. I would say step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. You have the power to stand in your power and just start to speak to them in a way that is calm, firm, respectful. And, there's other things you can do, which is, I say, fluff for favor, vomit later, which is you fluff up their ego to give them a little something that they want, which is stroking their ego in order for you to get what you want in return. So there's a lot of different things that people can do to start to control the narrative and not allow them to control the narrative constantly.
And will this will work for business partners as well, because a lot of people fall out in those relationships. Yourself, but it's 100%. A very hard one to navigate, especially if you've built a business together. It's kind of like a relationship. It's as hard as a relationship. And I always say, I'm a big one for people out there, try not to go into business with friends, because I'd always say there are no friends in business.
No.
But
good advice.
That's my number one advice. But getting out of something like that, when we all start, especially women, we all get excited about growing a business, and we're young and you want to start something with a friend. And it is it's very much like marrying someone, I say, because you're stuck with them. And,
yes.
Those kind of things. So do you implement the same? So like we have a prenup in a marriage, would you give someone an advice going in with a friend to do the worst case scenario now too?
Oh yeah. You've got to have a very, very specific agreement around the partnership, the business, the roles and responsibilities, the duties, who's going to do what, and what's going to happen if you don't end up staying in the partnership? How is it going to be divided? What are you going to do? I mean, nobody wants to talk about the end at the beginning, but it makes it so much easier if you have it all specifically defined. Then there's not that, the worst thing that for anyone is the expectation. And that's in relationships, that's in business, whatever it is. You've got an expectation, they don't meet your expectation, and then resentment starts to set in. And that's the more you can define it in words and in a contract, or lay it out, then it reduces that issue.
I mean, there it is, girls, because what I think is that everybody feels a certain amount of excitement when you go into a relationship, excitement when you go into a business, and you forget all the rest because you're just so happy that someone's either fallen in love with you or believe it in you and you've done a business together, right? So it's very, very similar, actually. And all I can tell you from experience is to prepare, because you don't know anyone until money's been involved, until the shit has hit the fan and something has gone wrong, or you simply don't like each other anymore. And that happens, for everybody. It happens in relationships and it happens in business partners, and, how you're going to navigate that. And I think if we all sort of prepared ourselves and took the not embarrassment, but as a shame maybe out of having these conversations at the beginning, you would have a much easier end. And I really, really believe that, because it is a minefield right now. As you said, the law doesn't protect you against people and ex-husbands, or protect your money, or I've seen people that have earned all the money and the men have gambled it away or lost it without telling them. What would you also advise? That women just keep separate bank accounts and keep completely separate through all of these things, so that they're not joined, so that you can get out easily of any kind of relationship with a narcissist?
Yeah, I mean, if you have assets going into a relationship, then you don't. And if all you have are assets and you don't have to worry about income, the easiest way, even without a prenup, is to keep it separate. Do not mingle it with anything. Don't mingle it with a dollar that you've earned or anybody else's money or anything else. Just keep it completely separate. That's the way to protect it.
I'm literally just having this conversation with another girlfriend of mine. I can't tell you how important it is, girls. Rebecca, this has been really, really helpful. And it's something that I practice. And I wish more women would, and more women would stand up for themselves and understand their own worth. Because no matter what you're going into relationship-wise, ladies, you all have something to give, and you all came in with something, and you should all leave with something and more. Thank you for listening to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored. Rebecca, tell everyone how they can find you, how they can find your course. Will give also teachers confidence to do all of these things and to go in and yes.
So they can go to Slay Your Negotiation for the course. I have free phrases for disarming narcissists. I talked about that step 1 and how to speak to them. They can get those at disarmthenarc.com. Those are totally free. My YouTube channel is Rebecca Zung TV, Rebecca Zung TV, or .tv, Rebecca Zung .tv. And then my Instagram, my website, all my name. So easy to find.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. Thank you so much.